We are reading from the Yoga Sutras. This is our Yoga Sutra class number 22. And we are studying the second chapter and the aphorism number 11 onwards. Well, let me straight away go to this aphorism. This says that dhyana heyaha tadvrittayaha. Tadvrittayaha, those weakened or subtle vrittis of the kleshas or the pain-bearing obstacles. The vrittis, those who stand on our way to realization, have to be given up or to be destroyed forever by meditation, have to be neglected, avoided. That is the meaning of the word heya. There is a definitive way to eliminating these kleshas, these painful abstractions. We generally do not follow the preparatory steps. We are much interested in getting information about the result or the ultimate or the fruit of any process. What we will gain after we follow this process, that is always of much interest, not the process itself. Obviously, we collect all information from the internet. Things seem to seem so easy nowadays. But the logic is, you get information about the process, about the preparatory steps of a process, and then you do not practice them. Because you know all about it already from the internet. Then why not remain satisfied with the information about the result, about the outcome of the process? That too you get from the internet. When do you seek it for practical purposes? Why do you seek it as a material thing? If the information or theory about the process satisfies you without following them in practical life, then be happy with the experiences of samadhi information. The theoretical or the informative samadhi will satisfy you, will solve all your problems. Why not that? If just the information about how to cook an item is enough and you don't need to physically or actually cook, then the theoretical information about the food item should satisfy your hunger. And it is so easy. This is the reason that we come to complain that this is not working, that is not working. Complaints and complaints and complaints. Most of the time, the initial preparatory acts are so simplistic. They seem so simplistic, as they should be actually, because they are initial steps. You have to learn step by step. You cannot start running as a child immediately. So that is why we don't give so much importance. If you tell something very complicated, our complicated mind appreciates that to be a very nice thing which has got a lot of paraphernalia, do's and don'ts in that. Then people are very happy and interested in that. So much ritualistic is our mind. The process of eliminating the kleshas or the painful vrittis that bind us is like that. The process begins with very easy steps and then intensifies itself slowly through practice. This is being explained in this aphorism. We have to begin with the beginning if we want to be the beginners. The vrittis of kleshas, we know them already, but let me remind you because we have learnt it in the earlier lesson. They are called There are 5 such kleshas. They are called avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, avinivesha, panchaklesha. So, they have the manifested forms of their names and utility, which can be made subtle and weakened by the Kriya Yoga. Avidya, we know, ignorance. Asmita, egotism or egoism. Raga, attachment. Dvesha, aversion. And abhinivesha, clinging to life or fear of death. These manifested vrittis are not that strong. Then those subtle vrittis have to be reduced to their names and forms only. Vrittis are there. These kleshas are there. They are troubling our mind, they are troubling our body. They are disturbing us in our way to realization. Then what to do about them? Then try to weaken them, try to make them less strong. And then they have to be reduced to their names and forms only. Like the roasted seeds, they will retain their names and forms, but the utility will be lost. The power to germinate again, that power will be lost. That seed will look like a mango seed, that seed will have the name that it is a mango seed, but it has lost its utility, the power to germinate. These subtle vrittis are very powerful actually. Hence, regular practice of meditation in the form of differentiation between what is the self and what is not is the way to reduce the utility of those vrittis. If you come to know, just know that a certain thing is not useful, then that thing automatically loses its utility value for you. They may be there in your store, but you will not use them. And maybe you will put it on the roadside with the tag, please take it. It's free. Auf Deutsch gesagt, gratis zum Mitnehmen. Well, that is what is called giving up. Giving up means giving up the utility of the vrittis. Giving up the utilities of the vrittis. Please remember this. You don't have to throw away everything. Let it be there, but you know these are not useful. The utility only will have to be reduced to zero. Either by burning it or by just knowing that it is not useful for me, not necessary. The aphorism uses the word heya. Heya means to be ignored, to be discarded, like that. They will be there in the store of the chitta, memory, but they are useless. Suppose a farmer has a stock of seeds which have lost their power of germination. Or suppose those seeds are of no use to him. Then what should he do? Therefore, the question will be how to clean the store of these useless things. This is the question. I said that now make the things useless. That is what Yoga Sutra says. Now, what to do with this big store of useless things? Useless things means they are vrittis, which we don't want, we are not interested in, we neglect them, or we have burnt them. We fried them just, roasted them. We do not need to take extra effort to discard them. That is called hana. Discard means hana. We just have to dissolve the store, the chitta itself. Then we can say that the klesha vrittis are destroyed. The storehouse, just burn the storehouse. What is there? Nothing will be there. There is a nice story about a monk who lived in the Himalayas. One day when he went for begging his food, he was given a big chunk of jaggery, molasses. He felt very happy to have it because it was really hard to push the dry chapati, that handmade wheat bread, into the throat without any condiment or any lubricant, so to say. So this monk carefully stored that jaggery in a pot and hung it in his hut. Days go by, the monk felt very happy about the stock of the molasses because that had given him some assurance about easily or comfortably swallowing the dry chapatis. Every time before taking his wheat bread, he used to bring the pot of jaggery down, take out some measured little portion and eat, so that it should not be finished quickly. He was careful that the stock should not end soon. But one day he was invited to a spiritual gathering of people. He was asked to speak on spiritual life. As it is normal for a monk to teach the audience, he discussed the kleshas that, as we have seen, are obstacles in spiritual life. He eloquently spoke about the ego, attachment, aversion and fear of life, etc. People liked his simple but profound talk. It impressed many spiritual seekers. The monk came back to his hut. That night, the monk sat for his dinner. This is the value of discussing the scriptures. What good it has done to the listeners, that is not of concern here. The concern is what good it has done to the speaker. The monk sat in dinner, looked up and saw the pot of jaggery. Suddenly the veil of his own ignorance dropped off. He came to his senses and recognized how he himself was slowly attached to the possession of the molasses. How the molasses occupied his mind constantly. How his mind became calculative, and so on and so forth. He stood up and said, "Prapanch uda denge." In Hindi he said, meaning is, by one stroke I will finish off the possession. That created a new world of attachment. In a moment he threw the whole lot into the flowing river nearby. Sri Ramakrishna also advised us to be careful about our personal possessions and needless hoardings. He has said that the birds and itinerant monks do not hoard things. Possessions are not bad if they are not meant for our selfish use, harmful use, and if they do not become a cause of our bondage. That is why Sri Ramakrishna has also said, but even a bird hoards food when she has her chicks to take care of. Swami Vivekananda says, if you go on practicing meditation for days and months and years, until it has become a habit, until it will come in spite of yourself, anger and hatred will be controlled and checked. The next aphorism investigates into the root cause of our kleshas or afflictions. So we read the next aphorism. Klesha mulaha karmasayaha drishta adrishta janma vedaniyaha. The karmasaya in the aphorism means store of the impressions of work, storehouse, karmasaya. Let me explain this. This is called the science of knowing, kind of epistemology. Suppose I am seeing an object, a pot, in front of me. I have to gain knowledge about the pot. The object pot has its name, shape or dimension and utility attached to it. Nama Rupa Vyavahara. But the substance of the pot is clay. Now my mind takes an impression of the shape and dimension through the optical nerves connected to the eyes. Now please note that the impression of the pot that is thus created on the mind is not exactly of the same size as the eyes have seen. Then the mind attaches the information about the name and utility value to the pot, this impression in the mind. To this impression, which impression? The impression of the approximate shape and size. And the ego registers this impression as admissible, acceptable, storable. Then it becomes a samskara, an impression. It makes a mark there. We may experience many things during the day, but we do not keep all in the mind, because we do not want to register them. In the same way, samskaras are our experiences, gathered through other sense instruments, like the experience of sound through the ears, smell through the nose, etc., can be stored. These samskaras or registered impressions are called karma, and the store is called karmashaya, the store of karma. So the impressions are called karma and the store is called karmashaya. It is like the storehouse of a company. If it is the karmashaya of one Mr. John, then it is John Karmashaya. It is being looked after by God so that it is not mixed up with the storehouse of James, Jill, Jack. Maybe the work of poor God has been made easy by now by us because of the introduction of the quick response QR codes. Well, let me clarify the meaning of the word karma once more. Actually, in English language and also in languages in other parts of the world, we hear that people use the word karma as a derogatory term, something bad happening to someone because of his or her earlier misdeed. But this is how such an important and significant word of a magnificent philosophical system has been misinterpreted and maybe willfully under a vicious plan. But the word actually means both good and bad karmas, not only bad karmas. That is why I prefer to use the word samskara in the place of karma. Right? Let me mention a chart about samskaras and how they manifest their effects in this life and in afterlife. We are talking about samskaras. Samskara has two types. Sabija means with seed. Seed means the tendency to come out of the concentration of the mind. Suppose we have started concentrating in a meditation and then we come back to normal restless state. That tendency to come out is called bija. So therefore this samskara that brings us out from concentration, that is called sabija samskara. This is called vyuthana samskara in Sanskrit, that it helps us to get out, come up, wake up. Vyuthana means to wake up. Another is nirbija samskara, means seedless. This is experienced when we go deeper and deeper into different samadhis. This is called nirodha samskara. This abandons the sabija samskara, the tendency to wake up, get up, come out. Let us forget about the second type for the time being, that is nirodha samskara. We forget about it. then we will be engaged with the first one, the Sabija Samskara. This Sabija, or the one with seed, has two modes. First we saw Sabija and Nirbija Samskara, and we said we are not interested in Nirbija Samskara now because that has been already dealt with and will be dealt with later. And we are now interested in Sabija Samskara because that is connected with our kleshas. So, and this Sabija Samskara has got two modes. Klishta Samskara, pain-bearing impressions we have read, which are rooted in our ignorance, avidya. And Aklishta Samskara, these are also samskaras, but they do not increase the total load of samskaras. Aklishta. They increase the purity of our intellect. And some of them are called prajna samskaras. We will come to that. Let us leave the second one alone. Here the second one for a moment and make us busy with this first one. So Klishta Samskara. We said Klishta, Aklishta. Aklishta Samskara and Klishta Samskara. Now we are concerned with the Klishta Samskara. That is the first one, first mode of this Sabija Samskara. We left Nirvija Samskara, that is out of question now. We got engaged with the Sabija Samskara. And now that Samskara, Sabija Samskara, has got two parts. One is Klishta Samskara, means painful samskaras. Another is Aklishta Samskara. So we left out the second one here also. So we are now engaged with 1.1. So that is called Klishta Samskaras, painful samskaras, impressions. These painful samskaras or impressions are files saved on our hard disk. They create karmashaya. Karmashaya means the container of the karmas, container of samskaras. And this has three consequences. The container of samskara is the source, the storehouse, the cause of the three things in our life. Karmashaya. Karmashaya means the storehouse or container of the karmas or samskaras. And that is the cause for three consequences in our life. Patanjali says, Jati, Ayu, Bhogaha. Jatihi, species. Ayuhu, lifespan. And Bhogaha, both pleasure and pain. This is a stock of both impressions, dharma good and adharma bad. This karmasaya. That means the stock or store of impressions will determine, number one, three things, jati, ayu, bhoga. The stock or storehouse of impressions will determine, number one, in which species one will be reborn. I am speaking to you and I accept that I am born in a human species. But in my next birth, in which species I will be born, that will be depend on my stock of karmas, my storehouse of karmas, jati. How long I will continue to live in this life or in that life, that will be also determined by the storehouse. And how much karma or bank balance, both good and bad, has to be experienced in that life, that is also a product of this storehouse. Let me repeat it. This store of impressions will determine in which species one will be reborn, what will be the span of this new life, like how many years we will live, and how much karma or bank balance, both good and bad, has to be experienced there. Now, as you can guess, this is a very serious thing. If we care for ourselves, if we care about ourselves, if we want to make our life meaningful, then and then only this is very serious. Patanjali himself says here. If life has no meaning, if we do not, the life has no meaning if we do not find a meaning in our suffering too. Whole life will be meaningful when you find a meaning in your suffering, as you find a meaning in your enjoyments. It is serious because it shows how we leave our fate to the karmasaya, to the store of our own doing. We have no control. We have no control that we will be reborn as a human being again. When the samskaras accumulated in the store starts bearing its fruits, their fruits, then we become subject to species, age, and pleasure and pain. So, the storehouse samskaras now became dynamic, now started bearing fruits. These samskaras, not the whole thing, but those samskaras that have started producing results are called by a different name. And in Sanskrit that is called vasana. So, karmasaya becomes a vasana. Karmasaya is just quiet. It is not active, inactive. But vasana means some part of those stored up impressions started bearing fruits, started producing results. In general term, the word vasana is used as samskara or impression, a stamp mark or a scar. Actually, when the samskaras are in store, they are called karmasaya, store of karmas, because they remain undifferentiated, indistinguishable, means you cannot distinguish between which one is bad, which one is good, and which one is prajna samskara. Prajna samskara is that good samskara that would lead to liberation. Good samskara can be enjoyed and finished. But some good samskaras, if you use for liberation, that is called prajna samskara. But when some of them start giving experiences like being in the body, belonging to a species, span of life, and pleasure and pain, these few active dynamic samskaras are definitely or given a definite term that is called vasana. It may be similar to the word prarabdha, that portion of the samskara or karma which has started bearing fruit or giving experiences. Clear? So we found karmashaya, and karmasaya means the storehouse of karmas, and vasana the active karmas. Now let us make a comparison. If we think that the store of samskaras is like the seed of a tree, the store is called the seed of a tree, then the field for sowing the seed will be called the vasana. The tree that comes out of the seed will be called species, jati, which will have its lifespan, and the fruits of the tree will be like pain and pleasure. So the seed is the storehouse of karma. The field in which it will be sowed or planted, that field is called vasana, and the tree that comes out of the seed will be called species, will be subject to species. Mango tree comes out of mango seed. That is called jati. And it will have its lifespan. And it will bear fruits both good and bad. Some are rotten, some are pecked by birds, some have worms, some are not properly developed, all varieties, pleasure and pain. Then the sutra says that these impressions have their origin in the painful obstacles, kleshas. Klesha mulaha tadvrittayaha. All those vrittis have their root in klesha, in the pain-bearing obstacles. This we have already discussed in the earlier class also. Now we may contradict this theory, saying that sometimes some things pop up in our mind of which we have not had any experience at all in this life. We call them auto-suggestions sometimes. But that is not true. They are not auto-suggestion. That is why Patanjali says these samskaras are not only created in this life but in earlier lives too. Drishta drishta janma vedaniyam. It has to be experienced in this life and the afterlife, and because they have been gathered in this life or life before. In this visible life drishta, and in the unseen life adrishta janma. Then we take up the phrase drishta drishta janma vedaniya. That is the result of these samskaras or karmas have to be experienced in this seen life or in unseen lives, next lives, or in both. They are experienced in the form of reward or punishment. Both the reward and punishments can be experienced in this life and in the life after death. Someone leading a reckless life in the world before death is nothing but living in the hell. Because it is a hellish life that this fellow is living. This life before death is visible. And this person enjoyed a visible hellish life before death. Or such children of hell go to hell to experience the consequences of this hellish life on earth. The mythical hell exists on the other side of the life. That is true. But on this side also, the hells are created. That is why it is called either drishta or adrishta, seen or unseen. Swami Vivekananda says, both happy and unhappy thoughts are called pain-bearing obstructions. Because according to the yogis, they in the long run bring pain. All happiness which come from the senses will eventually bring pain. All enjoyments will also bring pain. We will see that in the next aphorism. Patanjali himself says that. You may remember the story of Leo Tolstoy. How much land does a man need? That was the question. That is the book. The central character of that story is a wealthy and greedy peasant named Pahom, who lived in Russia. Once he heard that there were lands in sale at a cheap price by the Baskirs, the indigenous people. Their offer was very simple. For a sum of 1000 ruble, Pahom could walk around as long an area as he wanted. The condition was that he had to start at daybreak, fixing his marks on the ground along the way. If he would return to his starting point by sunset that day, all the land his route encloses would be his. But if he failed to reach his starting point, he would lose his money and receive no land. The whole day Pahom marked out the land. Towards the end he realized that he has gone too far from the starting point. He had to run back as fast as he could to the waiting baskets. He finally arrived at the starting point just as the sun was setting. The basket cheered him up, cheered him for his good fortune, but exhausted from the run, Pahom dropped down dead. His servants buried him in an ordinary grave only 2.5 feet by 8 feet, which has, of course, room for a marker and a headstone. After all, how much land does a man actually need? Therefore, Swami Vivekananda says, the yogis regard the sum total of the impressions, good or evil, as pain-bearing obstructions. They obstruct the way to freedom of the soul. Patanjali says in the Sutra number 2.15, we'll come to that both pleasure and pain are equally bad for a discerning person. Dukkham eva sarvam vivekinaha, eva sarvam, really so. Well, you do not need a DNA sample to prove these in a laboratory. William Shakespeare puts the following words in the mouth of Hamlet, suggesting that human knowledge is limited. Hamlet said, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy or science. Then the Yoga Sutra goes to the aphorism number 13. Sati mule tadvipako jati ayuhu bhogaha. When the kleshas or painful obstacles remain at the root in the form of samskaras or impressions, the result of the kleshas manifest in the facts of being born in one of the species, jati, span of life, ayu, and experience of pleasure and pain, bhoga. This is a very important aphorism, perhaps the greatest one which directly speak about rebirth. Jati. The first 4 opening verses of the Viveka Chudamani speak about the chance of being born in the human species. The modern day evolutionary biology has estimated that there are approximately 8.7 million species on earth, and they believe that 1 to 2 million of those species are animals. Then we know how the rarest of the rare is our chance to be born in the human species again. Shankaracharya says that all the biological and social opportunities and privileges that we have in this human life should be used to at least ensure that we are born again as a human being. It is a possibility or a chance, 1 in 8.7 million. If we do not do that, then Shankara says it is a shame on your human birth itself. Actually, Shankara calls such a person deluded, confused intellect. Mudhadhihi, he says. Because this person has lost the rarest of the rare opportunity that can be compared with suicide, atmaha. The Isha Upanishad also uses the same word, atmahanaha. A person who squanders away his or her privileges and opportunities of a human birth is nothing but committing suicide. Well, in this connection, please allow me to take a diversion to discuss a very relevant side point that is necessary to be explained. I will refer to what Shankaracharya has said in connection with this jati word here in the Yoga Sutra. And there what he has said in the Viveka Chudamani about the rights and privileges of women. Here we have seen that Patanjali speaks of the jati as the species. There is no mention of male or female. And then the two obstruction, ayuhu, span of life, and bhogaha, happiness, misery. These are connected with this species, jati. By jati, as I have said, Patanjali actually meant a species. In the Viveka Chudamani, as I have said, Shankaracharya stresses on the point of the rarity of our chances to land ourselves in the human species. That is the first rarity of our chances and privileges. There is a historical perspective to it. The question is actually posed against the norm in Vedic ritualism, yajnas, which was much older than the Upanishads. These earlier parts, older means that is about 10,000 years old from our time, and I don't know how much backwards we can push them, because before 10,000 years the Vedas took that type of excellent shape of human researches and human knowledge. So how long it took for them to reach to that height, that is not known. But from our time it is at least 10,000 years ago. These earlier parts of the Vedas are called Purva Mimamsa. There not only women, but also all others who were not trained in the arts of the performance of Vedic yajnas, those all are excluded from the list of who are authorized to take part in those yajnas. Why they are not trained? That is a different question. Why are not all human beings doctors? That is similarly a different question. But the word yajamana, the person who is the main player, for whose benefit the yajnas are done by the performers who are trained to do that yagas, this word yajamana meant a householder couple. A man without a wife was not allowed to be the host of a yajna. The host. Even the man is not allowed to perform the yajna. He and his wife together will be the host of a yaga. And if he does not have a wife, then he is not entitled or qualified to host a yajna. Hence, in a yajna, the Vedic ritualism allowed only those who were trained to perform a ritual. But there is no mention of a woman like all others performing yajnas. Then we see in the Upanishads a big departure in the respect of this debate. There are instances of great women like sages like Gargi, Maitreyi, Vak, and others who excelled their male counterparts in their learning and realization of the highest goal of life. Gargi was a moderator. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad you will see, Gargi was a moderator in a debate regarding scriptural explanations. The Upanishads highlighted moksha or ultimate spiritual liberation as the goal of human life. There is no discrimination about the human's age, gender, physical inability, color, race, etc. But this message was not immediately implemented in the society at large. It took time. We know even with all modern facilities and money available, it is not practically possible to easily vaccinate the small population of Germany, even though it is the fourth largest economy in the world, going neck and neck with India. A big span of time elapsed thereafter between the Vedic society and the time when Sri Krishna came. It is obvious that there was this debate still lingering in the air. The date of the Gita would be at least around 200 BC, before Christ. Now we see in the Gita, in the end of the 9th chapter, that Sri Krishna uses his whole weight and authority to set to rest all doubts about the competence of women compared to that of the men in respect of acquiring param gatim, the highest liberation. He said that all, including women and others, who were excluded from the scheme of actually performing the Vedic rituals, do attain the highest spiritual liberation. You may not be a doctor performing in the hospitals, but still you have the right to attain spiritual liberation. Where is the discrimination here? Well, Sri Krishna uses the verb attain in present tense, not will be attaining. Attain in present tense. It is always the truth. So the so-called sinners also do have hope for attaining the goal of life. Not only the sinners, but others who are not mentioned in the Vedic rituals as having the right to perform the yajnas, they too attain liberation. Shankaracharya came much later than the time assigned to Sri Krishna or Bhagavad Gita. We may remember that the society had changed considerably by that time. The authority of the religious bodies governing, guiding, and also most of the time misguiding our lives in the family was weakened considerably. And we see an example of such a rare occasion in the very life of Shankara himself. Shankaracharya wanted to defeat the high priest of Vedic ritualism, the great Mimamsaka, the Kumarila Bhatta. Bhatta was in his last day of earthly life. Hence he asked Shankara to go and defeat his prominent disciple or student, Mandana Mishra, a householder, and a Mimamsaka, followers of Vedic ritualism. Please remember this. In that debate with Shankara, Mandana's wife, Ubhaya Bharati, became the moderator. Can you imagine the situation? The greatest of the greats, in those times, Shankaracharya and Mandana Mishra, they are debating over religious issues, philosophies, and the moderator was the lady Ubhaya Bharati, the wife of Mandana. So we see that women were still playing their role even in the ritualistic Vedic traditions being followed by the society. Shankara held the Gita in very high esteem, just next to the Vedas. While interpreting the verse number 32 in the 9th chapter of the Gita, Shankara supported Sri Krishna's views. Now let us listen to what Shankara has said there in his commentary to this particular verse. He meant that Sri Krishna was passing an act, a law as it were, regarding his creation. He first dealt with the scope of the wrongdoers, who we call sinners. We are all born sinners, that is how some people say. Sri Krishna was dealing with that first. That is of most concern in those days. So he gave priority to that. So Sri Krishna said, as Shankaracharya has interpreted, these sinners, Papa Yonayaha, these sinners, the so-called hopeless ones, attain the highest goal of life. Attain. In present tense. Always. The mention of the word Papa Yonaya or sinners is about those whom the society has condemned, writes Swami Ranganathanandaji in his book. Period. Then Shankara writes, well, even those like the women and others who are not mentioned as the performers of the yagas also attain the highest liberation. Again, same present tense. This advice is about those, Ranganathanji writes again, whom the society has neglected. If you look at the reconstruction of the verse into prose order and the interpretation of the verse by Shankara, you will surely know that this was not a very highly debatable issue even in Sri Krishna's time. Hence the use of the word api also in that sentence. It was mentioned as a side topic, the women's right, not as a main issue at that point of time. Much time has passed in between when we come to the time of Sri Ramakrishna. It is due to his and Holy Mother's personal influence that in the centers of the Ramakrishna Math, the monks' order, and Sri Sarada Math, the nuns' order, women are also taking part and performing ritualistic pujas. Well, the modern world has to go much ahead in time to see that women, like their male counterparts, are equally respected, equally paid for the same job, and also counted in the scheme of religious rights. As you know, once Mrs. Hillary Clinton famously said, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human's rights, once and for all. Just imagine, she is a citizen of that country which boasts to call itself the motherland of liberty. And this is the time we are living in. Now let us interpret the verse in the Viveka Chudamani from the above perspective. Shankara says that it is the rarest opportunity to be born as a human being, to land in the human species. Then he counts privileges. Birth, jati is over. Now privileges. We are born as human beings, not born with privileges like that. And then Shankara says, it is still rare to be born as a man. This is a very debatable word. What is the chance? It is like you play a lottery. To get one number correct, the chance is 1 in 8.7 million. Now to get two numbers correct, the chance is halved. How? It is 2 times of 8.7 million. That is one chance in 17.4 million. It grows exponentially as you add more numbers. The later numbers of privileges for getting 3, then 4, etc. number correct are just mind-blowing. By using the word male body, Shankara does not exclude women from the rights. He has not done so really, nowhere, as I have explained. No one has done so. Only the society misinterpreted and took advantage of it. We have seen that just now from our interpretation. Shankara is targeting this male human being because of his privileges. Let us go back to the time of Shankara. In the society in those days, when women are mostly burdened with childbearing and rearing the children, with no modern medical facilities available, they had little time to do other things that the men folk could do. In view of that practical perspective, the men folk were more privileged, advantaged Then we have seen that Shankara ends his criticism of the male humans saying, despite your privileges and advantages and opportunities, if you do not attain the highest goal of life, then your life is in vain. Vain is your human birth itself. He calls such a person a deluded, confused person. Mudhadhi, as I have said, because he has lost a golden opportunity. That he compared with suicide. Atmaha. Much can be said about this, but I think this much is what we need to clarify here for the purpose of our clarification of the word jati, species. I am really sorry for the long detour, and we will go back to the discussion of the jati once again, following the Yoga Sutra and comparing that with two other things, ayuhu bhogaha. What would be the span of our life in this earth between birth and death? And bhogaha means how much we will suffer. I am using this word bhoga in the sense of durbhoga, means how much we will suffer, both through enjoyments and also through suffering. So today we have come to the end of our time. I will stop here. Thank you very much for your participation, and we will end this with chanting Om for once. Om.